The first bullet shattered the glass wall behind Nurse Elodie Vance before she even heard the gunshot. 1 second. She was standing in the trauma bay of Street Brigid's medical center, with both hands pressed against a dying man's chest, counting compressions under the harsh white glare of emergency lights. The next, the entire world exploded into screaming alarms, raining glass and blood-red reflections across the hospital floor. "Get down!" someone yelled. Elodie didn't. Her patient convulsed beneath her palms, his oxygen mask fogging weakly, his tattooed hand clamped around her wrist with desperate strength. He was huge, dressed in a torn black shirt soaked through at the ribs, a silver signet ring cutting into her glove. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes were disturbingly calm, dark, focused. Not on the bullets. Not on the men shouting outside the trauma bay. On here. "Elodie," he rasped. Her heart stopped. She had never told him her name. Another shot cracked through the room. The monitor above his bed screamed into a flat, continuous tone for half a second before the rhythm stuttered back. "Everybody out," Dr. Kerr shouted. "Security! Lock down the ER." But security was already on the floor near the sliding doors, one guard clutching his shoulder, another crawling backward through broken glass. Beyond the trauma bay windows, black SUVs screeched beneath the hospital entrance canopy. Men in dark coats poured into the rain, some carrying wounded bodies, others aiming into the night. The whole ambulance bay had become a battlefield. Elodie looked down at the man beneath her hands, Cassian Vale. Even if the nurses whispered his name like a curse, even if half the city pretended he was only a nightclub owner, everyone knew what he really was. The most feared Mafia boss in New Carthage. The man whose family controlled the docks, the casinos, the riverfront construction contracts, and every shadow between them. The man no one touched. Yet someone had not only touched him tonight, someone had tried to erase him. Cassian's fingers tightened around her wrist. "You need to leave this hospital," he said, voice low and rough. Elodie stared at him as blood pulsed beneath her gloved hands. "You're bleeding into your abdomen and giving me orders?" His mouth twitched, almost like pain amused him. "Not an order," he whispered. "A warning." The power cut out. For one impossible second, Street Brigids disappeared. Then the backup lights snapped on, bathing the trauma bay in cold blue emergency glow. Rain hammered the windows. Somewhere down the hall, a woman screamed. A child cried. The intercom crackled and died. Elodie bent over Cassian, pressing harder against the wound under his ribs. "Stay with me," she ordered. He looked at her with a terrifying kind of stillness. "I have been," he said. Before she could understand what that meant, the trauma bay doors burst open. 3 men in black suits rushed in, soaked with rain, their faces hard and furious. One of them had blood streaked across his cheek. Another carried a pistol low at his side, angled toward the floor but ready. Dr. Kerr raised both hands. "No weapons in my ER." The tallest bodyguard ignored him and moved straight to Cassian. "Boss, we have to move. Now." Elodie blocked him with one shoulder. "He's not stable." The bodyguard looked at her like she was a small object in the wrong place. "Move." "No." The word left her mouth before fear could stop it. The room went silent, except for the monitors and rain. Even Cassian's men seemed shocked. Elodie kept one hand on Cassian's wound. The other braced against the gurney. She was 5'6", exhausted from a 12-hour shift. Her blue scrub splattered with blood, her hair coming loose from a messy knot at the back of her neck. She should have been invisible to men like these, but she had been a nurse long enough to know that the person standing between life and death did not need permission from dangerous men. "He has internal bleeding," she said, voice shaking but clear. "If you drag him out of here, he dies in your car." The bodyguard's jaw clenched. "If he stays here, everyone dies." That landed like ice in her stomach. Cassian turned his head slightly toward the guard. Ronan. The bodyguard froze at once. Cassian's eyes never left Elodie. She decides what I can survive. Something in the room shifted. Not respect. Something more dangerous. Recognition. Elodie swallowed. Then he needs surgery. No surgery, Cassian said. You don't get to refuse because you're dramatic. A faint breath left him. It might have been a laugh if he hadn't been dying. Elodie, stop saying my name like you own it. His gaze sharpened. Outside the trauma bay, gunfire erupted again, closer this time. The windows at the far end of the hall cracked. Nurses screamed. Ronan moved to the doorway, speaking into his comms in a low, urgent voice. We have hunters inside the hospital, he said. East corridor compromised. Elodie felt the words slide under her skin. Hunters. Inside. Dr. Kerr grabbed a crash cart and shouted for blood. 2 nurses ran toward the supply fridge. Another explosion shook the building, and dust fell from the ceiling tiles. Cassian's breathing changed. Shallow. Controlled. Too controlled. Elodie leaned closer. Who's shooting at you? His eyes flickered to her mouth, then back to her eyes. People who know killing me is easier than surviving what I'll do tomorrow. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need tonight. The lights flickered again. Ronan turned from the doorway. His face had gone pale beneath the blood. They're not just here for you. Cassian's expression changed. It was subtle. A fraction of stillness hardening into something lethal. Ronan looked at Elodie. They asked for the nurse by name. Every sound in the trauma bay seemed to sink underwater. Elodie's hands went cold inside her gloves. What? Cassian tried to sit up. Elodie shoved him back down. Don't move. But Cassian's gaze had already turned black. Who asked? He said. Ronan hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. Cassian's voice lowered. Say his name. Elian Cross. The name meant nothing to Elodie, but it meant something to the men in the room. Dr. Kerr stopped moving. Ronan's hand tightened around his weapon. The other guards exchanged looks like the walls had just caught fire. Cassian shut his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, there was no patient on the bed anymore. Only a king who had woken wounded in his enemy's reach. Elodie, he said quietly, listen to me very carefully. I'm not going anywhere with armed men. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Another gunshot punched through the ceiling. A sprinkler burst, spraying cold water over broken glass and blood. The monitor flickered. Somewhere nearby, someone screamed Elodie's name. Cassian's hand came up and closed around her wrist again. Not hard enough to hurt, just enough to stop the world. They came here for me, he said, each word slow through pain. But they knew your name before they entered this hospital. That means someone has already decided you matter. I don't matter to gangsters. His eyes locked on hers. To me, you do. The confession hit too hard for how quietly he said it. Elodie's breath caught. For half a second, she saw something behind his control. Something raw, buried, and old. Not charm, not manipulation. Fear. Not for himself, for her. Then the trauma bay doors flew open again, and a masked man in grey tactical gear raised a gun toward Elodie's chest. Everything after that happened in fragments. Ronan firing first. Dr. Kerr dragging a nurse behind a cabinet. Elodie ducking over Cassian's body by instinct. The masked man hitting the floor. Cassian's hand on the back of her neck, pulling her down as another bullet tore through the monitor above them. His blood soaking her sleeve. His mouth near her ear. Now, he growled. Ronan lifted Cassian from the bed with another guard's help. Cassian should have collapsed. Instead, he forced his feet to the ground like pain was a negotiation he refused to lose. Elodie stepped back. He can't walk. Cassian looked at her. You're coming with me. No. He swayed once. Blood dripped from beneath his shirt onto the tile. Then a second masked man appeared beyond the glass, aiming through the shattered window. Cassian moved faster than any injured man should have been able to move. He grabbed Elodie by the waist, spun her behind him, and took her down behind the gurney as bullets tore through the trauma bay wall. His body covered hers, heavy, warm, bleeding. For one impossible second, Elodie was trapped beneath the most feared man in the city while gunfire shredded the room above them. His breath hit her cheek. His jaw tightened near her temple. "If I have to choose between your permission and your pulse," he whispered, "I will choose your pulse, every time." Then his men dragged them both into the smoke-filled corridor. Rain blasted into the ambulance bay as they ran. Elodie barely felt her feet touch the ground. Ronan had one arm around Cassian. Another guard kept Elodie pressed between them. Sirens wailed somewhere too far away. Hospital staff huddled behind overturned chairs. A paramedic sobbed beside a wrecked ambulance with a bullet hole through the windshield. A black SUV slammed to a stop near the curb, doors already open. Elodie twisted away. "I have patience." Cassian turned, pale and bleeding beneath the rain. "And they have a hospital. You have me. I didn't ask for you." "No," he said. "But someone put your name on a kill order tonight." Her stomach dropped. Behind them, a shot cracked. The SUV window spiderwebbed. Cassian shoved her inside. Elodie hit leather seats, cold rainwater and blood on her hands. Cassian fell in after her, one hand pressed to his ribs, his face tight with pain. The doors slammed. The SUV tore away from the hospital. Through the back window, Street Brigids vanished into rain, flashing lights and gun smoke. Elodie turned on Cassian, furious and shaking. "You kidnapped me." Cassian leaned back, bleeding across the immaculate black leather. "No," he said, voice almost gone. "I kept you alive. You don't get to decide where I go." His eyes opened slowly. "Yes," he said. "Tonight I do." The convoy flew through New Carthage like a funeral procession. At war, 4 black SUVs cut through the rain, running red lights, tires hissing over flooded streets. Neon signs smeared across the windows in blue and violet streaks. Elodie sat rigid in the back seat beside Cassian, one hand still pressed against his wound because even her rage could not override instinct. "You're bleeding too much," she said. "I know. You need an oar. I have one." She looked at him sharply. "Of course you do." Cassian's mouth pulled faintly at one corner. "My mansion is better equipped than most hospitals in this city." "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be." His voice weakened on the last word. Elodie pressed harder. He inhaled, not sharply, but enough for her to know it hurt. "Good," she muttered. "Pain means you're alive." His eyes drifted toward her. "You talk to all your patients like that?" "Only the arrogant ones who get shot and refuse medical advice." Something almost gentle moved through his expression, so brief she might have imagined it. Then Ronan's voice came from the front seat. "We lost 2 vehicles behind us. Cross's men are blocking the West Bridge." Cassian's eyes changed again. The softness vanished. "Take the old tunnel." Ronan glanced back. "The tunnel exposes the convoy. It exposes them too. We have her in the car." Cassian's voice turned cold enough to freeze the windows. "Which is why no one misses." Elodie stared at him. "Do you hear yourself?" Cassian did not look away from Ronan. "Yes, you're talking about a war like it's weather. Now," he turned to her, "war is kinder than men pretending they aren't already killing people." The SUV swerved hard. Elodie grabbed the seat. Cassian's hand caught her forearm before she could fall forward. His grip was firm, protective, infuriating. She pulled away. "Don't." He let go instantly. That bothered her more than if he had held on. The convoy plunged into a narrow industrial tunnel beneath the old shipping district. Sodium lights flashed overhead, amber and white, making Cassian's face appear carved in alternating shadow and brightness. For a moment, the rain disappeared, replaced by the roar of engines and the echo of tires on concrete. Elodie peeled back the torn fabric at his ribs. The wound was ugly but not hopeless. Deep entry trauma, possible liver involvement, pressure slowing the bleeding but not stopping it. She had treated worse in the ER. She had lost men with less. "You said they knew my name," she said quietly. Cassian watched her work. "Yes." "Why?" He was silent. She looked up. "Do not tell me I don't need to know." "You don't." She laughed once, without humor. "You dragged me out of my hospital during a shooting and shoved me into a Mafia convoy. I think we passed the point where you decide what I need." His Chaser held hers. The tunnel lights flickered across his eyes. Dark brown, almost black, not empty. That was the worst part. Men like Cassian Vale were easier to hate when they looked soulless, but his eyes were full of things he refused to name. "Elian Cross has been trying to take my territory for 18 months, he said. "He failed at business, failed at bribery, failed at assassination. So now he's shooting nurses?" "No," Cassian said. "Now he's using history." Elodie went still. "What history?" Before he could answer, the tunnel exit exploded in fire. The SUV slammed sideways. Elodie's shoulder hit the door. Cassian cursed, grabbed her, and pulled her down across his lap as gunfire erupted from ahead and behind. The vehicle fishtailed. Metal screamed. Ronan shouted orders. Headlights spun across the tunnel wall like white blades. Elodie smelled gasoline. Smoke. Blood. Cassian's arm locked around her back. "Stay down. I can help. You can stay alive." "That is not the same thing." The SUV skidded out of the tunnel into the storm. A black motorcycle shot past them, a masked rider raising a weapon. Cassian reached beneath the seat, pulled out a compact pistol, and fired through the shattered window without looking away from Elodie. The motorcycle crashed into a spray of sparks behind them. Elodie stared at him, horrified. Cassian lowered the gun. "You asked who I am," he said. "This is part of the answer. I know who you are." "No," he said softly. "You know what men whisper." The convoy surged up a private road carved through cliffs above the river. At the top, through sheets of rain, Elodie saw the mansion. It rose from the black hillside like something built by a man who expected betrayal from the sky. Stone walls, iron gates, floodlights, security towers half hidden among cypress trees, windows glowing cold white against the storm. Beyond it, New Carthage sprawled below, all neon veins and wet rooftops, unaware that its underworld was bleeding toward midnight. The gates opened before the convoy stopped. Armed guards lined the driveway. Elodie's breath caught despite herself. This was not a home. It was a fortress pretending to be one. The SUV stopped beneath a covered entrance. Men rushed forward. Cassian tried to step out by himself and nearly collapsed. Elodie moved before anyone else. She caught him with both hands, one at his chest, one under his arm. His body was heavy, burning with fever beneath wet fabric. For a second, his face lowered close to hers. Rain dripped from his hair onto her cheek. His breath was uneven. "You should have let me take you to surgery," she whispered. "I did." She looked past him. The mansion doors opened. Inside, under a chandelier of cold crystal, stood two women in surgical gowns, a man with a medical bag, and a rolling trauma table, already waiting on black marble. Elodie hated that he had been telling the truth. Cassian's eyes softened at the edges as he looked at her. "Welcome to my home, Nurse Vance." "I'm not staying." His gaze dropped to the blood on her sleeve, then lifted back to her face. "You are, until the war is over." The private operating room beneath the mansion was cleaner than half the hospitals Elodie had worked in. Cold, white lights, stainless steel instruments, monitors, ventilator, blood units in a temperature-controlled cabinet, a surgical team that moved with military silence. It should have reassured her. It didn't. A mansion with an oar meant a mansion that expected people to be injured inside it. Cassian refused anesthesia until Elodie looked him in the eye and said, "If you want to live, stop proving you're impossible to kill." That finally did it. Not the doctor, not Ronan, not the blood loss. Here. Cassian held her gaze for one long second, then nodded once. Do what she says. The surgeon, Dr. Amara Sloan, gave Elodie a brief assessing look. You're a nurse? Yeah. 7 years. Scrub in. Elodie almost refused. She wanted to throw her gloves into Cassian's face and demand to be driven back to Street Brigid's. She wanted to call the police. She wanted to call anyone who still believed the police could protect people from men like him. But Cassian's blood was on her hands, and beneath the mask of power, he was still a body fighting to survive. So she scrubbed in. The surgery lasted 2 hours and felt like 15 minutes. A bullet had torn through muscle and clipped the edge of his liver. Another fragment had lodged near his lower rib. He had lost too much blood, but not enough to die if they worked fast. Elodie handed instruments, suctioned blood, monitored pressure, and forced herself not to think about the fact that the patient beneath the lights could order executions with the same calm voice he used to say her name. Once, during a dangerous drop in pressure, Cassian's hand twitched beneath the drape. Elodie reached out without thinking and closed her fingers around his. The surgeon did not comment. Neither did Ronan, who stood like a shadow near the door. But Cassian's heart rate steadied. Elodie noticed. So did everyone else. When it was over, they moved him to a private recovery suite on the mansion's 2nd floor. It looked nothing like a hospital room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the storm. A fireplace burned low against a black stone wall. Machines hummed quietly beside a massive bed with grey linen sheets. Armed guards stood outside the door. Cassian remained unconscious. Only then did Elodie's adrenaline collapse. She stood at the foot of the bed, still in blood-smeared scrubs, watching the rise and fall of his chest. Her hands trembled so badly she curled them into fists. Ronan approached from behind. You saved him. I did my job. You saved the wrong man, according to half this city. Elodie turned. Then why does he have so many people willing to die for him? Ronan's expression didn't change. Because the other half knows what he keeps buried. What does that mean? It means stay in this room until he wakes. Her anger returned, sharp and welcome. I'm not a prisoner. Ronan looked toward the windows, where rain streaked down the glass like the city was melting. Tonight you're a target. That's worse. I want my phone. No. I want to call my sister. No. Elodie stepped closer. Do not make the mistake of thinking because I'm scared. I'm weak. For the first time, something like respect crossed Ronan's face. I can see why he chose you. Elodie froze. Chose me for what? Ronan's expression closed instantly. The door opened before he could answer. A woman in a cream silk blouse entered carrying a folded change of clothes. She had silver hair cut sleek at her jaw, diamond earrings, and the kind of posture that made rooms behave around her. She looked at Elodie as if reading her blood type, childhood wounds, and every lie she had ever told herself. I am Mirella Vale, she said. Cassian's aunt. Elodie said nothing. Mirella set the clothes on a chair. You will shower. You will eat. You will rest. I will leave. No, Mirella said calmly. You will not. Elodie laughed under her breath. Does everyone in this house confuse kidnapping with hospitality? Mirella's eyes flickered. Not offended. Interested. Hospitality is when a guest may leave safely, she said. Protection is when leaving would get her killed. Why would Elian Cross want me? Mirella glanced at Cassian's unconscious body. That is Cassian's secret to tell. Elodie's stomach tightened. I don't want his secrets. My dear, Mirella said softly. You were standing in one long before tonight. Elodie looked down at her blood-stained hands. Outside, Thunder rolled over the river. She had the sudden, terrible feeling that the mansion had not swallowed her by accident. It had been waiting. The room they gave her was larger than her entire apartment. Elodie stood in the doorway, dripping rainwater and exhaustion onto polished wooden floors. Tall windows faced the city. Pale curtains moved in the draft. A marble bathroom glowed behind an open door. On the bed lay soft grey clothes, folded with unsettling care. No locks on the outside. That should have made her feel better. It didn't. She showered because her skin smelled like blood and smoke. She scrubbed until her hands turned red. She changed into the clothes because her scrubs were ruined. Black leggings, an oversized cashmere sweater, thick socks. Everything fit too well. When she stepped out, there was soup waiting on a small table. She didn't touch it. Instead, she searched the room. No visible cameras. No phone. No exits except the door and windows too high above the cliff. She opened drawers, checked vents, studied the balcony doors, and found nothing useful except a small silver music box on the nightstand. It was old, dented at the corner, not decorative, personal. Inside was a tiny ballerina with one broken arm. Elodie stared at it, uneasy. She had seen one like it before. Not recently, not clearly. A memory from childhood, blurred by fever and grief. Her mother sitting at the kitchen table, crying over something in her hands. A melody playing quietly. A man's voice outside their apartment door. Angry. Low. Then nothing. Elodie closed the music box too quickly. A knock came at the door. She turned. It opened before she answered, and Cassian stood there in a black robe over bandages, one hand braced against the frame, looking like death had made a formal complaint and lost. Her anger flared. "You should be unconscious." I disagreed. "You had abdominal surgery. I remember. Do you have a hobby besides ignoring medical instructions?" His eyes moved over her face, taking in wet hair, pale cheeks, exhaustion she couldn't hide. "You're shaking." "I'm furious." "That too." He stepped into the room. Elodie backed up once. He noticed. Stopped. That mattered. She hated that it mattered. "You should eat," he said. "You should be monitored." "I am." She glanced around. "Of course." His mouth tightened. "There are no cameras in your room." She went still. "I didn't say there were." "You looked. You notice everything?" "When it concerns you." The words settled between them. Too intimate for a prison, and too dangerous for a rescue. Elodie crossed her arms. "Why did those men know my name?" Cassian's face closed. "Not tonight." "Yes, tonight. You need rest. I need answers. You need to survive long enough to hate them." She stared at him. For a moment, the room held only the sound of rain on glass. Cassian walked to the table slowly, each step costing him more than he wanted her to see. He poured water into a glass and held it out. She didn't take it. His eyes lowered to her hands. "You haven't eaten in 14 hours, he said. "How do you know that?" His silence answered before his mouth did. Elodie's pulse thudded. "How long have you been watching me?" Cassian's jaw tightened. "How long?" she demanded. "Long enough." The glass in her hand would have shattered if she had been holding it. "You sick bastard." He absorbed the words without flinching. "Probably. You monitored my shifts?" "Yes." "My apartment?" "No." She searched his face. "That took you too long to answer. I never put cameras inside your home. But outside?" His eyes didn't move. Elodie felt the room tilt. "I want to leave." "No." "I want to leave right now." "No." She stepped toward him, fury burning through fear. "You don't get to stalk me, kidnap me, bleed on my shoes, and then stand in my room acting like you're saving me." Cassian's expression finally cracked. "I wasn't stalking you. What would you call it?" "Keeping a promise." The words punched the air from her lungs. "What promise?" Cassian's gaze drifted to the music box on the nightstand. Elodie turned slowly. You know that music box? Yes. Her voice lowered. How? His face went blank in the way people go blank when pain is too old to still have a name. It belonged to your mother. Elodie could not move. My mother died when I was 9. I know. She was a school nurse. No? Cassian said quietly. She was a witness. The world narrowed to the rain, the music box, and his voice. Elodie whispered, Witness to what? Cassian looked at her like answering might destroy something neither of them could rebuild. To the night my father was murdered. Elodie's knees nearly weakened. Cassian took one step forward, then stopped himself. Your mother saved my life, he said. And because of it, my family hid you both for 2 years. That's impossible. It's true. No. Elodie shook her head. My mother hated men like you. My father was a man like me, Cassian said. She hated him too. She saved me anyway. Elodie's throat tightened. Memories shifted, reshaping under new light. A sudden move when she was 7. Her mother changing their last name. Men in black coats outside their building. Her mother crying over envelopes of cash she never spent. The night she died in a car crash that never felt like an accident, though no one had listened when Elodie said so. Her voice came out, small, furious, terrified. You knew me when I was a child? I saw you once. How old were you? 17. And you've been watching me because of her? Cassian's eyes held hers. At first, the room seemed to breathe around them. At first? She repeated. His silence was worse than a confession. Elodie backed away from him. Get out. Elodie, get out. His face tightened with pain, but not from the wound. He turned toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped. Elian Cross killed your mother. The words entered her body like a blade. Elodie stared at his back. Cassian didn't turn around. He failed to kill you because my aunt got you out of the city before he found the file. Now he knows you're alive. He knows I've been protecting you. And tonight, he decided hurting you would hurt me more than shooting me. Elodie couldn't breathe. Cassian's voice dropped. He was right. Then he left her with the music box, the rain, and a past that had just risen from the dead. By dawn, the mansion was at war. Not in the loud, chaotic way Elodie expected. In the quiet way only rich criminals and trained killers could manage. Guards changed positions without speaking. Reinforced shutters lowered over the east windows. Men moved equipment through underground corridors beneath the kitchen. Black SUVs arrived with damaged doors and bullet holes, disappeared into a garage below the cliff, and emerged repaired hours later, like the mansion itself could heal metal. Elodie watched from a second-floor balcony above the main hall, wrapped in the grey sweater. Sleep nowhere near her. Cassian's world ran on blood, loyalty, and secrets. Her world ran on charts, blood pressure cuffs, and the fragile belief that every life deserved saving. They should never have touched. Yet his blood had dried beneath her fingernails. Ronan appeared at the bottom of the stairs with 2 guards. Miss Vance, he said. Mr. Vale wants you in the dining room. Elodie descended slowly. I don't care what Mr. Vale wants. Ronan did not smile. That makes 2 of you. The dining room looked like a cathedral built for enemies. A long black table stretched beneath modern chandeliers. At one end, Cassian sat in a chair he had no medical right to occupy, dressed in a black shirt open at the throat, bandages hidden beneath it, his skin pale but his posture absolute. Around him stood men and women who looked like generals, accountants, wolves, and priests of the same dark religion. Maps of New Carthage glowed on screens along one wall. Red zones marked active attacks. Street Brigid's hospital was circled twice. Elodie stopped in the doorway. Everyone turned. Some stared with curiosity, some with resentment. One older man with a scar across his chin looked at her like she was the reason they were losing money, blood, or both. Cassian's gaze found her, and the room seemed to align around it. "You should be in bed," she said. A few heads turned, stunned by her tone. Cassian almost smiled. "So should you. I wasn't shot, not for lack of trying." The scarred man scoffed. "We are discussing war, Cassian, not nursing schedules." Cassian's eyes moved to him. The temperature dropped. "Then discuss it respectfully around the woman Cross tried to kill in my hospital." "My hospital?" Elodie repeated. Cassian ignored the correction. The scarred man leaned back. "That's the problem, isn't it? Cross knows she matters. Now every man in this room bleeds because of a nurse." Cassian stood. It happened slowly because of the wound. But once he was upright, the room went silent. He placed both hands on the table and looked down its length. "Say that again." The man's confidence flickered. Cassian's voice stayed calm. "Say she is the problem." No one moved. Elodie felt heat rise in her face. She hated this. Hated being made a symbol in a war she had never chosen. Hated the way part of her felt protected when she should have felt controlled. The scarred man looked away first. Cassian sat back down, but the warning remained in the air like smoke. Mirella entered behind Elodie, touching her elbow lightly. "Come, I'm not part of this." "No," Mirella said. "You are the reason half of them will show their true faces." That was not comforting. Elodie sat beside Cassian only because it was the chair Mirella pulled out, and because standing would have made her look afraid. Cassian slid a folder toward her. She didn't open it. "What is this?" "Your mother's file." The room disappeared. Her fingers went cold. "I don't want this in front of them." Cassian looked at the others. "Leave." The scarred man started to object. Cassian didn't even look at him. Now, one by one, the room emptied until only Cassian, Elodie, Mirella, and Ronan remained. Elodie opened the folder. Inside were photographs, police reports, hospital records, old newspaper clippings, and a picture of her mother that made Elodie's chest cave inward. Marianne Vance stood outside Street Brigid's 20 years ago, wearing nurse scrubs, younger than Elodie remembered, holding a coffee cup and laughing at someone beyond the frame. Elodie touched the photo. She hated being photographed. She whispered. "She gave me that one," Mirella said. Elodie looked up. Mirella's composure softened. "Your mother was braver than most soldiers I have known." "What happened?" Cassian answered. "My father, Aurelio Vale, made a deal with Elian Cross's father to end a dock war. Cross betrayed him at a charity clinic. Your mother was working volunteer triage that night. She saw who pulled the trigger. More importantly, she saw who ordered it." "Elian?" Cassian nodded. "He was 24. Ambitious. Violent. Already poisoning his own family from within." Elodie swallowed hard. "My mother testified?" "She was supposed to," Mirella said, "but the prosecutor sold the witness list before trial." Elodie closed her eyes. "Of course. New Carthage had always eaten honest people first." Cassian's voice was softer now. "My family hid her. Hid you. But Cross kept looking. She died in a car accident." "No," Cassian said. "She died because the mechanic who worked on her car owed Cross money." Elodie pushed back from the table so fast the chair scraped marble. "No." Cassian didn't move. "No, you don't get to say that like a fact you've had in a drawer for years." His jaw tightened. "I was 17. You still knew. I found proof later." "How much later?" Silence. Elodie stared at him. "How much later, Cassian?" 4 years ago." Her chest tightened until breathing hurt. "You knew for 4 years that my mother was murdered, and you never told me." "I tried." "When?" "The night you graduated nursing school." Elodie froze. Rain against auditorium windows. Her blue graduation gown. A black car parked across the street. A man standing beside it under an umbrella, tall and still. She had thought he was waiting for someone else. "That was you." "Yes." You left before I crossed the street. Because you were smiling. Her anger flickered, confused. Cassian looked down at the folder. You were with your friends. You had flowers. You looked like someone who had fought hard to build a life untouched by men like me. His voice lowered. I couldn't be the one to put blood back into your hands. Elodie hated that tears burned behind her eyes. You don't get to decide that. I know, but you kept watching. Yes. Why? Cassian's gaze lifted to hers. At first, guilt. Then duty. His voice roughened. Then you. No one spoke. Morella looked away. Ronan's face remained stone, but his eyes lowered. Elodie felt exposed, furious, shaken by the dangerous sincerity of him. You don't know me. I know you buy coffee for the homeless man outside Street Brigid's, even when you're late. I know you stay after shifts with patients who have no family. I know you lied to your landlord about the heat being fixed because the old woman upstairs needed repairs first. I know you sing when children are scared of needles. I know you keep your mother's badge in your locker. Her tears escaped before she could stop them. That's not love, she whispered. That's surveillance. Cassian flinched. Actually flinched. Good, she thought. Bleed somewhere, I can see it. You're right, he said. The admission stopped her. I have no defense that would make it clean, he continued. Only reasons. None of them good enough. Elodie wiped her face angrily. Then let me go. Cassian's expression became terrible in its restraint. I can't. Because of Cross? Yes. Or because you don't know how to lose control? His eyes darkened. Both. Before she could respond, the entire mansion shook. The chandeliers trembled. A distant boom rolled up from below the cliff. Alarms began to pulse, low and deep through the walls. Ronan pressed a hand to his earpiece. Southgate hit. 2 vehicles. Possibly a diversion. Cassian stood too quickly, went pale, and gripped the table edge. Elodie moved on instinct. Sit down. He ignored her. Lock the east wing. Move non-combat staff underground. Nobody touches Street Brigid's. Ronan nodded. And her? Cassian looked at Elodie. For once, she saw the war inside him clearly. The man who wanted to command. The wounded boy whose father died in a clinic. The criminal who had protected her from a distance because it was the only tenderness he understood. Take her to the interior safe room, he said. No, Elodie snapped. Cassian's gaze sharpened. This is not a debate. It is if I'm the subject. Elodie, you have wounded men in this house. His jaw clenched. My men are trained for that. Then train them to stop bleeding. Another explosion sounded. Farther away, Mirella stepped between them with calm authority. Cassian, let her work in the medical wing. She will be safer there than roaming the hallways trying to defy you. I don't roam, Elodie said. I stride with purpose. Despite everything, Ronan looked like he almost smiled. Cassian's eyes held hers. You do not leave the medical wing. I don't take orders. Then take a request. That made her falter. His voice dropped. Please. The word was so quiet. Only the people closest heard it. Elodie looked at him. Really looked. The most feared man in New Carthage stood wounded in his own fortress while war came through the gates. And all the command in him bent around one fragile word. Please. She hated him a little less for it. Fine, she said. But if your men need help, I help them. Cassian nodded once. Ronan goes with you. I don't need a babysitter. No, Cassian said. You need someone willing to die before anyone reaches the doorway. Ronan stepped beside her. Elodie didn't thank him, but she didn't refuse. The medical wing filled before noon. Men arrived from the south gate, with burns, shrapnel wounds, fractured ribs, knife cuts, concussions, and the kind of silent fear that only violent men showed when violence had finally found their own doorstep. Elodie worked until anger became motion. She stitched a guard's forearm while he stared at her in disbelief. "What?" she said. "You're not afraid of blood. I'm a nurse. You're not afraid of us." She tied the suture tighter than necessary. "Don't confuse unimpressed with fearless." He shut up. She cleaned a bullet graze on Ronan's shoulder. He stood still as stone. "You should sit," she said. "I'm fine. Do all Mafia men share one brain cell about medical care?" His mouth twitched. "We're encouraged to." She nearly smiled. Nearly. Through the windows, rain continued falling over the estate. The storm refused to break. Every room glowed with bright artificial light against the dark weather outside. Cold white lamps, blue reflections, black coats, blood on marble. The mansion looked like a luxury hotel hosting a slow apocalypse. At 3:17 p.m., Elodie found Cassian in the corridor outside the medical wing, one hand pressed to his side, speaking with a man on a tablet. He looked worse, sweat at his hairline. Color gone, jaw locked. "You're bleeding again," she said. The man on the tablet stopped talking. Cassian didn't look at her. "Give me the port schedules." Elodie walked up, lifted the edge of his black shirt, and saw red staining the bandage. Meeting over, Cassian finally looked at her. "I'm handling something." "Soang-yi, Elodie." She pressed 2 fingers near the wound. He inhaled sharply. The man on the tablet suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. "Medical wing," she said. "In 5 minutes. Now." His eyes narrowed. Hers did not move. Ronan from behind her said quietly, "Boss." Cassian looked at him. Ronan's face remained blank. "She has the needle." Elodie held up a syringe of antibiotics she had been carrying. Cassian stared at it, then at her. For one fragile second, amusement crossed his face. "You're enjoying this." "I enjoy patients who listen." He lowered the tablet. The man on the screen looked terrified to witness the surrender. Elodie guided Cassian into a private exam room and closed the door harder than necessary. "Shirt off." His eyebrows lifted. "Do not make that expression," she said. "You are bleeding through professional boundaries." He obeyed. That was almost worse. Cassian removed the shirt carefully, revealing bandages across his ribs, bruising along his abdomen, old scars across his chest and shoulder, and one black tattoo curving beneath his collarbone. Elodie forced her focus to stay clinical. "Mostly." He sat on the exam table while she peeled back the dressing. "You tore 2 stitches, she said. "Only 2? She shot him a look. He said nothing else. The silence grew too intimate. Elodie cleaned the wound. His skin tensed beneath her hands, but he never pulled away. She felt his gaze on her face. "Stop staring." "I'm trying." "That is not better." "I didn't say I was succeeding." Her hands paused. He looked almost human in that moment. Exhausted, wounded, stripped of suit and myth. A dangerous man reduced to breath and pain beneath her care. "You should hate me," he said. "I'm working on it." "That isn't an answer. It's the only one you deserve." His mouth softened. "Fair." She taped fresh gauze over the wound. "Why didn't you kill Cross years ago?" Cassian's expression changed. "He disappeared after your mother died. Came back with money, men, and alliances my family couldn't break without starting exactly what began last night. So you waited. I prepared. And I was part of that preparation? No." She looked at him. He met it. "You were the line I didn't cross." A bitter laugh left her. "You watched me for years." "Yes. But I never used you. You're using me now." "No," he said quietly. "Now. I'm failing to let you go." Her fingers stilled against the bandage. That was the most honest thing he had said. A knock came at the door. Ronan entered without waiting. "We found the leak." Cassian's entire body changed. Elodie stepped back. "Who?" he asked. Ronan's eyes flicked to Elodie, then back. "Don't." Cassian went very still. The name hit him harder than the bullet. Elodie recognized it from the table earlier. Dante Loria, the scarred man who had called her the problem. Cassian's voice was quiet. Proof? Encrypted messages to Cross. Hospital location. Convoy route. Southgate timing. Ronan paused. And her file. Elodie felt cold. Cassian rose from the exam table. Elodie caught his arm. You are not going anywhere. His eyes did not look human. He sold your name. Her grip tightened. And you'll rip your stitches again. He sold your mother's file. Cassian. The sound of his name from her mouth stopped him. Not completely, but enough. He looked down at her hand on his arm. Elodie realized she was touching him voluntarily. She let go. You kill him now, she said, voice low. And Cross controls the next move. You become predictable. Ronan's gaze shifted to her. Cassian stared. Elodie swallowed. Dante wants you emotional. He wants you bleeding and angry. So don't be. Something dark and admiring moved in Cassian's eyes. Careful, Nurse Vance, he said softly. You're starting to sound like a queen. No? She said. I'm starting to sound like the only person here who has slept less than your enemies. Cassian almost smiled. Then the intercom crackled. A voice filled the room. Not one of Cassian's men. Smooth. Male. Poisonously calm. Good afternoon, Cassian. Every guard in the hall shouted at once. Ronan drew his gun. Cassian's face went colder than Elodie had ever seen. Eliane Cross continued through the mansion's speakers. I hope the nurse is comfortable. I chose not to hit the east wing yet. I'm told she's useful. Cassian turned toward the ceiling speaker. Elodie's blood turned to ice. Cross laughed softly. You always had a sentimental weakness for dead women's daughters. Cassian moved toward the door. Ronan blocked him. Boss, it's a trap. Everything is a trap. Cross's voice sharpened. Elodie Vance, can you hear me? Cassian stopped. Elodie couldn't breathe. The speaker crackled. Your mother died begging for you. Did Cassian tell you that? Did he tell you she offered him the evidence and asked his family to take you somewhere safe? Did he tell you the veils promised protection? And still she burned. Elodie's vision blurred. Cassian turned to her, and for the first time since she had met him, panic broke through his control. Elodie, he said, don't listen. But Cross kept speaking. Ask him where he was that night. The room became impossibly still. Elodie looked at Cassian. His face lost all color. Cross laughed again. Yes, ask him. The intercom died. No one moved. Elodie whispered, Where were you? Cassian said nothing. Her heart began to pound. Cassian. Where were you the night my mother died? Ronan looked down. Morella appeared in the hallway, her face stricken. That was answer before words. Cassian's voice came out rough. In the car, behind hers. Elodie stepped back. What? I was supposed to follow her out of the city. No. I was 17. My father had been dead 2 months. I thought I could protect her myself. Her face crumpled with disbelief. You were there? Yes. You saw it happen? His jaw clenched so hard she saw the muscle jump. The brakes failed on the harbor road. Her car hit the barrier. I pulled you out first because you were in the back seat and the door was jammed. She was pinned. Elodie covered her mouth. The memory returned not as image, but sound. Rain. Metal groaning. Her mother screaming her name. A boy's voice telling her not to look. You were the boy, she whispered. Cassian looked like the words cut him open. Yes, you saved me. I failed her. Elodie shook her head, tears breaking free. Why didn't you tell me? Because I hear her screaming every night, he said, voice barely controlled. And I knew if I told you, you would hear it too. The room blurred. Elodie stepped backward until she hit the counter. For years, she had dreamed of a stranger carrying her from broken glass, a dark-haired boy with blood on his face, telling her to breathe. She had buried the memory because the adults called it trauma confusion, but it had been real. Cassian had been real. The man she wanted to hate had carried her from the wreck that killed her mother, and then watched over the life her mother had died protecting. Elodie wiped at her face, angry at the tears, angry at the truth, angry that grief could be rearranged by one sentence. "I need air." Cassian moved. "Elodie, don't follow me." He stopped. The fact that he obeyed nearly broke her. She walked out of the room, past guards, past Mirella's silent sorrow, past Ronan's lowered eyes. She moved through corridors lined with paintings and bulletproof glass, until she reached a covered terrace overlooking the city. Rain swept across the gardens beyond the stone balustrade. The sky was charcoal. New Carthage glittered below like something beautiful pretending not to be rotten. Elodie leaned against a column and cried for the mother she had lost, the child she had been, and the man she did not know how to forgive. Minutes passed, or hours. She wasn't sure. Then a small voice behind her said, "He never forgave himself." Elodie turned. Mirella stood in the doorway. "He was a boy," Elodie whispered. "Yes," Mirella said. "But boys in this family are taught guilt before mercy." Elodie looked back at the rain. "He should have told me." "Yes, I hate that he saved me." "No," Mirella said softly. "You hate that it makes him harder to hate." Elodie said nothing. Mirella came to stand beside her. "Cross wants you divided from him. He knows Cassian is most dangerous when he is cold, and most vulnerable when he is afraid for you. I didn't ask to be his vulnerability. No one asks to matter." Below them, lightning flashed across the river. Elodie wrapped her arms around herself. "What happens now?" Mirella's expression hardened. "Now Cross attacks where he believes Cassian's heart is." The terrace light suddenly went out. Far below, near the garden wall, a guard shouted, then screamed. Mirella grabbed Elodie's arm. The mansion alarms erupted. This time, the war came inside. The first wave breached the lower gardens through the old wine tunnels beneath the cliff. Cross's men moved like shadows in grey masks, not loud enough to be chaos, not quiet enough to be ghosts. They cut power to the west wing. They jammed communications. They carried smoke canisters that filled the corridors with thick white fog. Elodie and Mirella ran from the terrace as metal shutters slammed down behind them. Ronan met them at the corridor junction, with 4 guards. "Safe room," he said. "I need to get to the medical wing," Elodie replied. "No," Ronan and Mirella said at the same time. An explosion rocked the floor beneath them. The chandelier at the far end of the hall crashed down in a spray of crystal. A guard went down. Elodie moved toward him. Ronan caught her around the waist and hauled her back as bullets punched into the wall where she had been. "Let me go. Stop trying to die usefully," he snapped. That startled her enough to stop fighting. Then Cassian appeared through the smoke. He wore a black coat over his bandaged torso, a gun in one hand, face pale with pain and fury. Blood had already begun to spread beneath his shirt again. Elodie's anger surged through terror. "You absolute idiot." He looked relieved to see her alive. That made everything worse. "Take her below," he ordered Ronan. "No," Elodie said. Cassian didn't look away from the corridor. "Not now." "Yes, now." Gunfire cracked from the stairwell. Cassian fired twice, cold and precise. A masked attacker dropped from view. Elodie flinched, but did not look away. Cassian turned toward her. "Elodie, this is not a hospital. You do not stand in the middle of bullets and argue with men holding them. You're bleeding, I'm aware. You're going to collapse. Not before they do." Smoke rolled between them. For 1 second, amid alarms and gunfire, they stood facing each other across the corridor, like the entire war existed only to force them into honesty. Elodie's voice broke. "You saved me when I was 9. His expression shifted. "You remember?" "I remember enough." Something devastated passed through him. Then another explosion shattered the moment. Ronan grabbed Elodie's arm. Cassian nodded once, and she realized he was sending her away, because staying near him would make him weak. She hated that she understood. "Cassian," she said. He looked back. "Don't make me save you twice in one day." A faint, dangerous smile touched his mouth. "Only twice?" Then Ronan pulled her down the emergency stairwell. The underground safe corridor smelled of stone, antiseptic, and old money. Lights flickered overhead as Elodie, Mirella, Ronan, and 2 guards moved fast through narrow passages beneath the mansion. Above them, the war rumbled like thunder trapped inside walls. They reached a reinforced steel door. Ronan entered a code. Nothing happened. He tried again. The panel flashed red. Mirella's face sharpened. "Dante!" Ronan cursed. From behind them came the sound of footsteps. Not many. Enough. Ronan shoved Elodie behind him. Inside the service clinic. Now. They turned into a smaller room stocked with emergency supplies, old medical equipment, and shelves of archived documents. Ronan locked the door and dragged a cabinet in front of it. Elodie looked around, searching automatically. Gauze, fluids, scalpels, oxygen tank, defibrillator. If violence entered, she had tools. Not weapons, tools. The door handle rattled. Mirella reached into her handbag and removed a pistol with the elegance of taking out lipstick. Elodie stared. Mirella glanced at her. "I was married to a Vale for 34 years, my dear." The door shook again. Ronan positioned himself beside it. Then the room's old intercom crackled. Elian Cross's voice returned. Clearer this time. "Elodie, I know you're in the clinic." Her skin went cold. Cassian's enemies moved through the mansion like they knew every secret vein. Cross continued. "Do you know why Cassian keeps you so close now? It isn't love. It's debt." Elodie's hands curled. Ronan whispered, "Don't answer." Cross laughed. "Ask yourself why he never came to your door, why he never knocked, why he hid in cars and cameras and shadows. Because he could protect an idea of you. A real woman might reject him. That hit too close." Elodie swallowed. The door banged hard. Mirella lifted the gun. Cross's voice softened. "I can give you what he never did, the file, the full truth. Your mother's last words. Walk out, and my men won't touch you." Elodie closed her eyes. Her mother's last words. A cruel hook. A perfect one. Ronan shook his head once. Mirella's jaw tightened. He is lying. But Elodie knew the worst part. Maybe he wasn't. Another impact slammed the door. The cabinet moved an inch. Elodie looked at the oxygen tank, then at the disinfectant alcohol, then at the overhead sprinkler. "Ronan," she said quietly, "can you shoot the light fixture when I say?" His eyes flicked to her. "What are you doing?" "Improvising." Mirella looked at her, and despite the danger, pride warmed her face. The door burst open. Smoke flooded in. 2 masked men rushed through. Elodie swung the oxygen tank with both hands into the first man's knee. He went down with a shout. Ronan fired above her shoulder, dropping the second. Mirella shot a third through the doorway before he crossed the threshold. Elodie grabbed the alcohol bottle and threw it toward the hall. Now, Ronan fired into the light fixture. Sparks rained down. Alcohol ignited in a bright flash across the threshold. Not an explosion, but enough sudden flame to force the attackers back, coughing and shouting. "Run!" Ronan barked. They ran. Elodie's lungs burned from smoke. Her heart hammered. Her body moved on pure adrenaline through a maintenance tunnel that sloped deeper beneath the mansion. At the far end, they emerged into the old wine cellar and found Dante waiting. He stood beneath yellow emergency lamps, with 6 armed men behind him, his scarred face calm, his gun pointed at Ronan's chest. "No one move," Dante said. Ronan raised his weapon. Dante smiled. "You shoot me, She dies first. A red laser dot appeared on Elodie's sweater. Ronan froze. Mirella went still. Dante looked at Elodie with mild disgust. Do you know how many men are dead because Cassian couldn't leave a nurse alone? Elodie's fear turned strangely clear. No, she said. How many are dead because you sold them? Dante's smile thinned. You have his arrogance already. I stitched 3 of your men this morning. One of them asked me if he'd still be able to hold his daughter. So don't stand there pretending you care about lives. Ronan shifted slightly. Dante noticed. Drop the gun. Ronan didn't move. The laser dot climbed from Elodie's chest toward her throat. Drop it, Dante repeated. Ronan slowly lowered his weapon. Dante's gaze moved to Mirella. Yours too. Mirella obeyed with icy hatred, and Dante stepped closer to Elodie. You're the key to ending this. Cross doesn't need Cassian dead tonight. He needs Cassian broken in public. Elodie's mouth went dry. What does that mean? It means he will trade the docks, the accounts, the Vale name, and his own crown to get you back. Dante's eyes gleamed. And then every family in New Carthage will see him kneel. Elodie's blood chilled. Behind Dante, one of his men pressed a device to his ear. Cross is in position. Dante nodded. Bring her. Ronan lunged. A shot fired. Elodie screamed as Ronan collapsed to one knee, blood spreading across his thigh. Mirella shouted his name. Dante grabbed Elodie by the arm. She twisted hard, slamming her elbow into his ribs. He grunted, backhanded her across the face, and stars burst through her vision. Then he froze. Not because of her, because every light in the wine cellar turned white. Brilliant. Blinding. Cold. A voice came from the speakers. Cassian's voice. Take your hand off her. Dante looked up, startled. The cellar doors at the far end opened. Cassian stood there with blood on his shirt, rainwater in his hair, and a dozen armed men behind him. His face was terrifyingly calm. Too calm. Elodie knew instantly that this was the version of him men feared. Not the wounded man on her exam table. Not the boy who saved her from a burning car. This was the boss. Dante shoved his gun under Elodie's jaw. Cassian stopped. The entire cellar held its breath. Dante smiled. There he is. The great Cassian Vale, finally on his knees. Cassian's eyes stayed on Elodie. Are you hurt? The question was so gentle it nearly broke her. She tried to answer, but Dante pressed the gun harder. Cassian's gaze shifted to him. I will ask once. Dante laughed. You're in no position to ask anything. Cassian raised one hand. Every man behind him lowered their weapons. Elodie's stomach dropped. Cassian no. He ignored her. Dante's smile widened. There. That wasn't so hard. Cassian removed his gun and placed it on the stone floor. Then he lowered himself to one knee. The wine cellar seemed to tilt. Mirella closed her eyes. Ronan cursed under his breath. Elodie stared at Cassian, horrified. Don't, she whispered. Cassian looked at her as if no one else existed. I told you, he said quietly. Your pulse, Dante exhaled in triumph. Good. Now tell your men to stand down at the docks. Transfer control of the south routes. Call the council and announce that Cross owns the river by dawn. Cassian's face remained unreadable. Let her go first. Dante laughed. You think this is romance? No, Cassian said. I think you're smart enough to know she's the only reason you're still breathing. Dante's smile faltered. Above them, a faint sound echoed through the cellar. A metallic click. Dante glanced upward. Cassian looked at Ronan. Ronan, bleeding on one knee, smiled faintly. Elodie realized then that Cassian kneeling had not been surrender. It had been positioning. The old wine racks behind Dante shifted. Hidden doors opened along both walls. Mirella had called it an old family house. Elodie now understood. The mansion did not only have escape routes, it had teeth. Cassian's men emerged from both sides, already aiming. Dante jerked the gun toward Elodie. She moved first, not away, into him. She drove her heel down on his foot and twisted under his arm the way Ronan had once shown a kitchen maid in the hallway earlier that afternoon while pretending not to teach her. Dante's shot went wild, cracking into the ceiling. Cassian surged up. Pain should have slowed him. It didn't. He crossed the distance like a storm breaking, slammed Dante against the stone wall, and struck him once with such controlled force that Dante dropped the gun. Elodie stumbled back into Ronan's arms. Mirella grabbed her and pulled her behind a pillar. The cellar erupted. Gunfire. Shouts. Glass bottles exploding. Wine spilled across stone like dark blood. Cassian moved through it with terrifying precision, wounded but unstoppable, his face carved from fury and fear. Then Cross's voice came from the open doorway, touching. Everyone turned. Elian Cross stood at the top of the cellar stairs in a grey coat, silver hair slicked back, eyes pale and empty. He held no weapon. Men like him didn't need to. The people around him carried enough. Beside him stood Dr. Kerr from Street Brigid's. Elodie's breath stopped. Herr Boss. The doctor who had shouted for blood. The doctor who had worked beside her for 5 years. The doctor who knew her schedule, her locker, her emergency contacts. Every shift she took. He would not meet her eyes. No, she whispered. Cassian turned slowly. The betrayal entered the room like poison. Cross smiled. I believe this is where everyone finally understands the shape of the board. Elodie stared at Dr. Kerr. You gave him my name. Dr. Kerr swallowed. I owed money. You told them where I was. I didn't know they'd shoot up the ER. Her laugh broke apart. You didn't know gangsters would be violent? Cross sighed. Spare us the moral disappointment. Doctors, politicians, priests, criminals, we are all expensive under pressure. Cassian's eyes were locked on Cross. Let her leave, he said. Cross smiled. Still negotiating from weakness? No, Cassian said. Offering mercy from habit. Cross's expression darkened. You were always your father's son. Dramatic, sentimental, dead men wrapped in expensive fabric. And you were always a parasite wearing a crown someone else bled for. Cross's smile vanished. The room tightened. Elodie felt the air, before violence. Then Dr. Kerr raised a gun with shaking hands and pointed it at Cassian. I'm sorry, he whispered. Elodie moved. She didn't think, didn't calculate, didn't choose. She stepped between the gun and Cassian. Cassian's face changed with pure horror. No! The shot exploded. Pain tore across Elodie's side, not deep, not central, but hot enough to steal her breath. She staggered. Cassian caught her before she hit the floor. Everything slowed. His arms around her, his blood mixing with hers, his face above her, all control destroyed. Elodie, he said, voice breaking. She had never heard him sound like that. Human, terrified. She pressed a hand to her side and felt warmth, but not too much. I'm okay, she gasped. He didn't believe her. Maybe because he had spent his life watching people say that before dying. Around them, Cassian's men moved. Ronan fired. Mirella shouted. Cross retreated up the stairs as Dante lunged for a weapon and was slammed down by 2 guards. Doctor! Kerr dropped his gun and backed away, sobbing. Cassian didn't look at any of it. Only her. You stepped in front of me, he said. You were already bleeding, she whispered. Seemed unfair. A shattered laugh left him, half pain, half devastation. Then his face turned deadly. He lifted her into Ronan's arms. Hold pressure. Ronan obeyed. Cassian stood, swayed once, then turned toward the stairs where Cross had vanished. Elodie reached for him. Don't. He looked back. Her hand was slick with blood. Don't become what he wants, she said. Cassian's eyes burned. He shot you. Kerr shot me. Because Cross bought him. Then don't kill the wrong man to punish the right one. His jaw trembled once, just once. Then he leaned down and pressed his forehead briefly to hers. I am not merciful enough for what you ask. No, she whispered, but you're strong enough. For a moment, the whole mansion seemed to wait for his answer. Cassian closed his eyes. When he opened them, the monster was still there, but it was leashed. Take her upstairs, he told Ronan. Seal the medical wing. And Cross? Ronan asked. Cassian looked toward the stairs. Alive, he said. I want him alive when the city learns what he is. It was not mercy, but it was the first step towards something that could become it. Elodie passed out before they reached the medical wing. When she woke, the first thing she heard was rain. Not alarms, not gunfire. Rain against glass. Her eyes opened to the private recovery. Her throat felt dry. Her cheek ached from Dante's strike. Cassian sat in a chair beside the bed. He looked destroyed. Not dramatically, quietly. His black shirt was gone, replaced with fresh bandages and a dark robe. His face was pale, eyes shadowed, hair damp as if he had showered but not slept. One hand rested near hers on the blanket, not touching, waiting for permission even unconsciousness could not give. Elodie watched him for a moment. The most dangerous man in New Carthage had fallen asleep sitting upright beside her hospital bed in his own mansion, one hand inches from hers like a starving man afraid to reach for bread. Did we win? She whispered. His eyes opened instantly. Elodie. He leaned forward, then stopped himself. Her chest tightened. I asked if we won. His voice was hoarse. Cross is alive. Dante is in custody. Kerr confessed on recording. The council has Cross's files. By morning, every family in the city will know he murdered witnesses, bought doctors, attacked a hospital, and broke war law by targeting medical staff. War law? She murmured. Criminals enjoy pretending they have principles. A weak smile pulled at her mouth and faded. People at Street Brigid's? 2 dead. 7 wounded. No patients killed. Elodie closed her eyes. 2 dead. People she may have known. People who had come to work believing the worst thing that could happen was understaffing, not war. Cassian's voice lowered. I'm sorry. She opened her eyes. He meant it. Not like men in power meant words meant to soften consequences. He meant it like a wound. You didn't fire into the hospital. No. But my world followed me there, and mine followed me here. He looked away. Elodie turned her hand on the blanket, palm up. He saw it. For a second he did nothing. Then he placed his hand in hers carefully, as though touching her too firmly might prove he did not deserve it. His hand was warm, scarred, strong. She should have pulled away. She didn't. I remembered more, she said. His body stilled. The car, the rain, my mother. Her throat tightened. You telling me not to look. Cassian's eyes closed. I'm sorry. You keep saying that. I have decades of it. She looked at him. What were her last words? Pain crossed his face. Elodie, tell me. He looked down at their joined hands. She said, tell my daughter she is not the thing they tried to destroy. She is what survived. Elodie broke. It was not loud, not cinematic, not beautiful. A small broken sound left her throat, and suddenly Cassian was on the edge of the bed, carefully gathering her against him without pulling at the wound. She cried into his shoulder while he held her, like someone holding the only innocent thing left in a burning world. His hand cradled the back of her head, not possessive, protective. I'm sorry, he whispered again. This time, she believed he was apologizing not only for what happened, but for every year he had loved her from a distance, because he had no idea how to step into the light without bringing shadows with him. Hours later, the storm finally stopped. Dawn spread pale and cold over the city. The mansion looked different in morning light, less like a fortress, more like a wounded animal that had survived the night. Elodie insisted on walking to the balcony. Cassian argued. She glared. He lost. Ronan appeared with a wheelchair. She glared harder. He disappeared with it. Cassian walked beside her, one hand hovering near her back without touching, visibly battling the urge to carry her. She moved slowly, bandages pulling at her side, but every step felt like proof that Cross had failed to turn her into another ghost in Cassian's life. On the balcony, New Carthage glittered beneath a rinsed silver sky. Police lights flashed downtown. News helicopters circled near street Brigids. The river reflected morning instead of neon. Cassian stood beside her. "They'll come for statements," he said. "Police, reporters, prosecutors, who will pretend they weren't afraid yesterday. Will you be arrested?" He looked at the city. "Eventually everyone pays for something. That's not an answer." "No." Elodie turned toward him. Cassian. He met her eyes. The vulnerability there was almost harder to face than his darkness. "I won't lie to you," he said. "I can protect you from Cross's remnants, from Dante's loyalists, from men who think revenge is inheritance. But I cannot make my life clean. I didn't ask you to. You should. I'm a nurse," she said softly. "I learned a long time ago that clean things can still rot, and broken things can still be saved." His breath caught. "But," she continued, "I am not a debt. I am not your promise. I am not your redemption." "No," he said immediately. "You're not. If I stay in your life, it will be because I choose to. Not because you watch from shadows. Not because you lock doors. Not because you decide fear is the same as love." He looked down. "I know. Do you?" His jaw tightened. Then he did something she did not expect. Cassian Vale, Mafia boss of New Carthage, owner of the house beneath her feet and the war beyond the river, took one step back from her, not away, back, giving her space, giving her the one thing he had taken when he forced her into the SUV, choice. "The gates are open," he said. "Your phone is in your room. Ronan will drive you anywhere you want. Street Brigids, your apartment, another city if you ask." Elodie stared at him. It would have been easier if he had ordered. Easier if he had stayed the villain. Harder to face the man trying. Clumsily and painfully, to become worthy of not being left. "And if I walk out?" she asked. His face tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Then I will make sure no one follows." "You?" "I will want to," he swallowed. "But I won't." Elodie looked past him at the balcony doors, at the mansion that had become prison, operating room, battlefield and confession chamber in less than 2 days. She thought of her apartment with its unreliable heat, the hospital locker with her mother's badge, the coffee stand outside street Brigids, the life she had built from survival. She thought of Cassian carrying her from a burning car at 17, Cassian kneeling in a wine cellar to save her life, Cassian stopping himself when she said don't, Cassian saying please. She was not ready to forgive everything. Maybe she never would. But forgiveness was not the same as walking away from the truth. "I'm going back to the hospital," she said. He nodded once, too quickly, like the sentence had gone through him and he refused to bleed where she could see. "Ronan will, when my shift is over," she interrupted. Cassian stopped. Elodie looked at him. "I still have patience. And I need to check on the wounded from last night. After that, I'm going to my apartment. I'm going to sleep for 12 hours, maybe 16. Then I'm going to decide what I want." His eyes searched hers carefully. "And what do you want now?" She should have said distance, safety, normalce. Instead, honesty rose first. "I want you to stop bleeding on my floor." For 1 second, he looked startled. Then a quiet laugh escaped him low, disbelieving, alive. It changed his face. Elodie almost smiled. Almost. She turned toward the city. After a moment, Cassian stood beside her again, not touching, not crowding, simply there. Below them, The gates of the Vale mansion opened for the first time since the war began. The drive to Street Brigid's was silent. Not empty, silent. Ronan drove. Cassian sat beside Elodie in the back because no one bothered pretending he would stay behind. His presence filled the SUV, but differently now. Less like a cage, more like a shadow choosing not to fall over her. The hospital looked wounded when they arrived. Boards over shattered windows, police tape fluttering in the morning wind, news vans along the curb, nurses in wrinkled scrubs, standing outside with coffee cups and 1,000-yard stares. The ambulance bay still smelled faintly of smoke. Elodie stepped out slowly. Conversation stopped. Everyone saw Cassian Vale behind her. Everyone saw the bandage at her side. Everyone understood pieces of a story they would spend years getting wrong. Dr. Kerr was gone. His name had already become a bruise among the staff. A young nurse named Tessa ran down the steps and hugged Elodie so hard she winced. "Oh my God, we thought you were dead." "Not yet," Elodie whispered. Tessa pulled back, crying. "They said he took you." Elodie glanced at Cassian. He stood several steps away, letting her have the space. "He did," she said. Cassian's face did not move. Then she added, "And then he kept me alive." The distinction rippled through the people around them. Not forgiveness. Not absolution. Truth. Inside, Street Brigid's moved with the exhausted resilience of hospitals everywhere. Broken things were taped. Blood was mopped. Patients were reassured. Nurses worked because suffering did not pause for trauma. Elodie checked on the wounded staff first. Then the guard, who had been shot. Then a little boy from pediatrics who had heard the gunfire and refused to sleep. She sat beside him for 15 minutes, telling him the hospital was built of brave people, and brave people got scared too. Cassian watched from the hallway through the open door. When Elodie stepped out, he looked away as if caught witnessing something sacred. "You can go," she said. "No." Her eyebrow lifted. He corrected himself. "I would prefer to stay until you leave." "Better." His mouth twitched. By evening, the city had begun eating the story. News channels called it a coordinated criminal attack. Police called it an ongoing investigation. Politicians called it a tragedy, with prepared sadness in their voices. Nobody said the word war, though everyone felt it. Elodie stood in the staff locker room alone, holding her mother's old badge. Elodie Vance, school nurse. The plastic was scratched. The photo faded. The woman in it smiled like she had no idea history would someday come for her daughter. Elodie pressed the badge to her chest. "I survived," she whispered. The door opened quietly. Cassian stood outside the threshold, not entering. "Elodie." She turned. He held the old music box in one hand. "You left this." "I didn't leave it. It was never mine." "Yes," he said. "It was." He held it out. She took it. Their fingers brushed. Neither moved away immediately. "I'm going home now," she said. He nodded. "I know." "Alone." His jaw tightened. "Yes, you can have someone outside the block." "Elodie." "Not outside my window. Not in the building. Not watching my door camera. One car at the corner. Until Cross is sentenced, not forever." He stared at her. She lifted an eyebrow. "Negotiation is healthier than surveillance." A slow, real smile moved across his face. Small, dangerous, beautiful, in a way that annoyed her. "As you wish, Nurse Vance. Do not make that sound romantic." "I'll try." "You'll fail. Probably." For a moment, the hospital corridor felt impossibly quiet around them. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rain clouds gathered again beyond the windows. Somewhere, a monitor beeped. Somewhere, a family cried with relief. Cassian's expression softened. "I don't know how to do this cleanly," he admitted. "This?" His eyes held hers. "Want someone without turning it into protection?" Love someone without making it a war. The word love entered the hallway like a match struck in darkness. Elodie's breath caught. He did not take it back. She looked down at the music box, then back at him. Then learn. I will. Not for me. His face tightened. For yourself, she said. Because I can't be another reason you hate what you are. Cassian absorbed that slowly. Then he nodded. No promise too big. No dramatic vow. Just a man who had spent his life commanding the world, learning that the woman before him would only accept something quieter and harder. Change. Elodie walked past him toward the exit. He did not follow. Not until she turned back at the end of the hall. You coming? His eyes lifted. To the car, she said. Not my apartment. The smallest breath left him. It might have been relief. It might have been hope. Outside, night settled over New Carthage again, but the storm had softened. The streets shone with rain and reflected the hospital lights in long white ribbons. Cassian walked beside Elodie down the ambulance bay steps, slower than usual because both of them were injured and too proud to admit it. At the curb, Ronan waited beside the SUV, leaning heavily on a cane he pretended not to need. Elodie pointed at it. I approve. Ronan looked offended. It's temporary. Everything is temporary if you're stubborn enough. Cassian glanced at her. She says this as medical philosophy. She is usually right, Ronan said. Cassian looked betrayed. Elodie smiled before she could stop herself. It was small, but Cassian saw it, and for 1 second, the violence, grief, guilt, blood, betrayal, and broken glass of the past 48 hours loosened around them. Not gone. Never gone. But not the only thing. The SUV drove Elodie back through the city she thought she knew and now understood differently. The river roads, the old harbor curve where her mother died, the bridge where neon trembled on black water. She did not ask Cassian to stop there. Not yet. Healing had its own timing. At her apartment building, 1 car remained at the corner as agreed. Not 3. Not a convoy. 1. Cassian stepped out with her. I can walk to my door, she said. I know. He stayed by the SUV. She walked halfway to the building, then stopped, turned. He stood under the streetlight in a black coat, bandaged, exhausted, still dangerous. No longer pretending danger was all he was. Elodie touched the music box in her coat pocket. My mother saved you, she said. Cassian nodded. You saved me. Yes. Now, maybe stop making it the only story we have. His eyes changed. Something in him opened. Not much, but enough. What story would you prefer? Elodie looked up at her apartment windows, then at the rain-bright street, then at the man who had forced her into his mansion and somehow given her back a buried part of her life. I don't know yet. He nodded once. This time, he did not look wounded by uncertainty. He looked grateful for anything that was not goodbye. Elodie walked to her door. Before she entered, she glanced back. Cassian was still there, not following, not hiding, not owning the shadows. Standing in the open, for a man like him, it was almost an act of surrender. Elodie went inside. The apartment was cold, too quiet, a little dusty, exactly as she had left it, and completely changed. She set the music box on the kitchen table, placed her mother's badge beside it, and opened the lid. The broken ballerina began to turn. The melody was faint, unsteady. Still there, Elodie stood in the dim kitchen while the song played, one hand over the bandage at her side, and cried again. But this time, grief was not alone. It carried something else with it. Not peace, not yet, but the beginning of it. Across the street, Cassian watched her kitchen light turn on. Then he did what he had never done before. He got back into the SUV and left. No camera. No guard at the door. No shadow at the window. Only 1 car at the corner, facing outward, watching the street instead of her life. Weeks passed before New Carthage stopped trembling. Elian Cross was arrested in a federal sweep that exposed judges, doctors, shipping officials, and 2 police captains. Dante Lauria disappeared into a prison so private, the newspapers could not confirm which state held him. Dr. Kerr's confession became the key to breaking Cross's network, though nothing about that made Elodie forgive him. Street Brigid's rebuilt its glass wall. The trauma bay reopened. Nurses returned to 12-hour shifts with fresh trauma behind their eyes and sharper locks on every entrance. Elodie returned, too. Because hospitals were full of ghosts, but also full of life. Cassian did not visit for 13 days. He sent no flowers, no diamonds, no dramatic apology gifts. Only a single envelope through Ronan, containing copies of every document related to her mother's case, unedited, unhidden, and a handwritten note with 3 words. You decide everything. Elodie read the files, slowly over many nights. She learned who her mother had been when fear came. Brave, stubborn, terrified, unbought. She learned that Marianne Vance had not simply died because she was unlucky. She had died because she chose truth knowing it might cost her everything, and she had saved 2 children that night, her daughter and a 17-year-old boy named Cassian Vale, who grew into a monster with one sacred memory of mercy. On the 14th day, Elodie found him outside the old harbour road, not because he summoned her, because she asked Ronan where he went when he vanished. Cassian stood near the guardrail where her mother's car had broken through 20 years ago. The city was quiet behind him. The river below moved black and silver under moonlight. He turned when he heard her. For once, he looked unguarded. Elodie. She walked to his side. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, she said, "This is where you pulled me out." "Yes." "And where you couldn't pull her out?" His eyes closed briefly. "Yes." Elodie looked over the rail at the water below. "I used to think surviving meant leaving the past buried." Cassian's voice was low. "It doesn't." "No," she said. "It means deciding it doesn't get to make every choice for you." He looked at her. The wind moved between them, cold and clean. "I'm not safe," he said. "I know. I may never be. I know. If you stand near me, people will use that." She turned toward him. "People used me when I didn't know your name." Pain flickered across his face. She stepped closer. "But if I stay," she said, "it won't be in your mansion because you forced me. It won't be because my mother saved your family. It won't be because Cross made me a target." Cassian did not move. "It will be because when I was bleeding, you listened. When I told you not to kill from pain, you stopped. When I asked you to let me choose, you opened the gates." His eyes searched hers like a condemned man hearing a language he once dreamed of learning. Elodie reached for his hand. This time, she touched him first. Cassian went utterly still. "I don't forgive everything," she said. "I don't deserve that." "Probably not." A quiet breath left him, almost a laugh. "But I'm here," she said. His fingers closed around hers, slowly, carefully, reverently. Not like a man taking possession, like a man being trusted with something he had no right to hold. Below them, the river carried moonlight past the broken place. Above them, New Carthage glittered dangerous, beautiful, wounded, alive. Cassian lifted her hand and pressed his mouth to her knuckles. His eyes never left hers. No vow, no ownership, no demand, only a promise held in silence. Elodie stepped closer, and for the first time, he did not stand between her and the world like a wall. He stood beside her. The mansion on the cliff still waited in the distance. No longer a prison in her mind, but a place where war had taken her, and truth had found her. The hospital still glowed across the city, full of pain and healing. The road beneath their feet still remembered fire, but Elodie Vance was not the thing they tried to destroy. She was what survived, and Cassian Vale, feared by everyone, obeyed by killers, haunted by ghosts, finally understood that protecting her did not mean locking every door. It meant standing in the open. It meant letting her walk away. It meant being brave enough to stay when she chose to come back. The night wind moved through her hair. Cassian's thumb brushed once over her hand, tentative and aching. Elodie looked at him, at the man and the monster, the boy and the boss, the wound and the weapon. Then she leaned in and kissed him softly beneath the broken moonlight. Cassian did not pull her close too fast. He did not claim. He simply trembled once, as if tenderness frightened him more than war, and when he finally kissed her back, it was not the kiss of a Mafia boss taking what he wanted. It was the kiss of a man who had spent 20 years in darkness and had just been allowed for one impossible moment to stand where the light could reach him. Far below, the river kept moving. Behind them, the city breathed. Ahead of them, nothing was clean. Nothing was easy. But for the first time, the story was theirs to choose, and that was how the gang war ended, not with a crown, not with a body, not with the surrender of a city, but with a nurse standing beside the most dangerous man in New Carthage, and teaching him that love was not another form of control. It was the one thing he could never force, the one thing she gave freely, the one thing that finally made him lower his weapons and come home